Hey there, everyone. Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology with yet another question and answer segment where practicing astrologers bring me their questions and I provide them answers based on my astrological practice. If you're enjoying these Q&A segments and you'd like to work with either myself or an OSA certified astrologer, then by all means check out our website where you can book yourself a high-quality astrological consultation today. Also, I answer many of these questions and more in my book Mastering Traditional Astrology: A Depth of Beginning in the Celestial Art, which you can buy a copy of on Amazon.com. And if you'd like to become a professional astrologer, then check out our Professional Astrologers Diploma Program, as well as our Medical Astrologers Diploma Program by visiting the education page of our website.
Are you doomed for life? I guess that's the question. When you read you're reading somebody's chart and you're seeing some really negative things, let's say with a relationship, how do you, or not how do you say it, but I guess the question more is that person doomed for life, or is there a way out of that situation? So that's question one, but that wasn't actually my question.
Oy vey. Okay, so the next question is a rather existential one. And the question is, if you have something broken within your birth chart, are you doomed for your entire life with that thing? The natal chart is a fixed framework that represents our primary field of learning within any lifetime. And the natal chart is meant to be a description of our lives in planetary terms. Insofar as the natal chart is meant to be a description of our life in planetary terms, chances are the things that we see in our natal chart are fixed factors of our experience. Now, I think the actual point is that we all want to reincarnate and come into the world with a chart full of trines and sextiles and the grand water trine so that we can hang up our psychic shingle on our office door and whatever. So we all want to come into this lifetime with trines and sextiles. But however, because of whoever we pissed off in heaven, we all end up coming to the world with a chart full of squares and oppositions and quincunxes. So I think the reality is that none of us have a perfect chart. And I think a part of that is also because none of us lead perfect lives, truthfully. And even if our life is peaches and creams, we all have our struggles. We all have our sufferings. I remember I was teaching a class in Vancouver, Canada once, which is my favorite place on the entire planet, next to Cuba, because Cuba is actually my favorite place on the planet. But I was teaching a class in Vancouver once, and afterwards I was sitting down in the foyer with one of the ladies who attended the class, and I was telling her about something that I really love, but it's a major challenge in my life because I know it's not good for me, but I just love it. It just makes me feel so happy and so gleeful. But it's bad, it's something I know I should stay away from. It's something I know isn't the best thing in the world for me. It's something that I know I don't need in general, but I love it. And afterwards, she said to me, and just in case anyone is wondering how deep, dark, and dirty this is, it's cheese. I really love cheese. I have a big cheese, whatever. I'm psychically bound to cheese, and it's a very difficult habit to break.
You are the big cheese.
I am the big cheese. Okay, but that aside, I guess I took that on literally. But that aside, I said this to her, and her comment to me was so profound, and she wasn't even trying to be profound, but her comment to me was, Mychal, we all have our sufferings. And that really stood out for me, and it continues to stand out for me up until today, and I don't think it's going anywhere because that's just a fundamental part of being in an earth based experience. We all have our sufferings, and those sufferings are deeply embedded within the larger framework of our lives that our natal chart is meant to describe. So, if you have something challenging within your chart, I am of the persuasion that you're going to experience it. That's just a fundamental part of my relationship to the world. And I would love if that weren't the truth, but I think that it is the truth. And I think I've done enough astrology within my life to feel fairly settled knowing that that's just the way the astrological cookie crumbles. However, somewhere within my astrological practice, I developed this thought that we experience everything within the first 30 years of our life as a result of Saturn going over all of our natal planets at least once. And by the time as we have our Saturn return, we have already experienced every joy and every sorrow that our natal chart foretells. With that being said, I've similarly come up with a notion that as a result of that, we don't need to do it again. Now, I've never heard this from anyone at all. I've never read this in any traditional astrology book, and I dare say the person who the person who I got this from was my mother, who definitely is not an astrologer. But one of the aphorisms that we grew up with, or that she grew us up with, was this notion that if you go through life and you experience challenges and suffering and you didn't learn anything from those challenges or that experience of suffering, then you're going to go through it again. And I fundamentally believe that to be true. So, applying that to our astrology, we have 30 years to screw it up. And we all have the first 30 years of our lives to get things wrong, to make mistakes, to, be hooligans, basically, to be astral hooligans in the universe. However, after after you hit 30 years old, one would hope that you have your life together. One would hope that you have a sense of sobriety about you after having experienced those things the first time so that you don't have to experience them again. So I am of the persuasion that we do not need to relive some of the harder stories that our natal chart tells. We don't need to relive those more harsher stories again and again and again and again. However, we are the ones who decide that. And the unfortunate truth is that the reason why so many people tend to live the harsher stories of their natal charts again and again and again and again is because we get accustomed to the momentum of living life in the way that we've always lived it. And this is actually the real culprit when it comes to this whole dichotomy between fate and free will. This is the culprit. The culprit isn't that we have no free will, or the issue isn't that we have no free will. The issue is that we seldom use it. We don't really use the free will that we think we have because more often than not, what we're doing is defaulting to our own path of least resistance. And within our 3D reality, our path of least resistance is seldom of the Abraham Hicks variety. Our path of least resistance oftentimes is to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and go downstairs to the fridge and to pull out your Ritz crackers and cheese and to have yourself a cheesy wonderland, which is my path of least resistance when I am operating from my normal everyday perspective. And the reality is that the majority of us are operating from our normal everyday perspective. And that perspective has been grown over a lifetime of us being exactly who we are. So when we have issues with more fate-based approaches to astrology, like the astrology that I practice and like the astrology that I teach, our issue isn't an issue with the astrology. Our issue is an issue with ourselves. We are the problem within our astrological configuration. We are the thing that gets in the way of us experiencing other circumstances that actually are more uplifting, or that actually have the ability to make us feel as if we don't have to be burdened by the weight of our astrological stories. Because the only thing that keeps us committed to the weight of a particular story within our natal chart, especially the weight of a challenging story within our natal chart, is the momentum that we've built around that thing. So I think that one of the gifts of astrology is that it gives us the ability to lead a reflective life. And one of the gifts of astrology is that it gives us the ability to lead a contemplative life. And I think it was Pythagoras who said that there is nothing worse in this world than an unreflective life, or than a life that doesn't go through a process of contemplation. The non contemplative life is the worst sort of life for us to live, because if we're not spending moments in deep self study and reflection and contemplation, then chances are we're living our lives on autopilot. And the autopilot that many of us live our lives on is faulty. And it's been built around certain structures of comfort that feel comfortable on one level, but that fundamentally aren't actually beneficial, and that fundamentally don't actually assist us in living life in a truly evolutionary way. So, astrology gives us the ability to lead a reflective life and to have a reflective lifestyle. And I think that that's something that we all should commit ourselves to via the path that astrology provides us. And even if we don't believe in astrology at all, like there are many people in the world who think astrology is complete malarkey. So even if we don't believe in astrology at all, we shouldn't bar ourselves from living contemplatively within the world. And we shouldn't bar ourselves from engaging in some form of consistent reflection of ourselves. Because if we're not reflecting about who we are and about the decisions we're making, then we're just living on autopilot. And so few of us come into this life with an autopilot that's actually healthy. And so few of us come into this life with an autopilot that's geared towards us manifesting our highest and most effortless joy. And I think that when we step into a more reflective framework with life, then we have the ability to slow down the momentum. And there are many things that give us the ability to slow down the momentum. A yoga practice gives us the ability to slow down the momentum, and yoga forces us to be in a state of reflection, even if we're just practicing asana, the physical component of yoga. We have to reflect and know, what is our foot doing? What is our ankle doing? What is our knee doing? What is our thigh doing? What is our buttock doing? What is our torso doing? It's a reflective practice. And that level of reflection is meant to permeate other parts of our lives that allow us, or that therefore have the effect of forcing us to slow down and think, what is my brain doing? What are my words doing? What are my thoughts doing? What are my senses doing? What are my reactions doing? How am I reacting to this situation in the same way I've always reacted to this situation? Can I slow down? Can I curb the current of my momentum long enough to give me some vista of spaciousness that allows me to have other options, as opposed to just reacting on autopilot? Yoga does that. Meditation does that. A consistent daily practice of Reiki self-healing does that. There are so many things that give us the ability to slow down, and ideally, astrology should do that as well. Who knows if that's actually the purpose of why people come to astrology? No one has ever said to me that they're coming to me for a reading so they can slow down. People often come to me for a reading when they're trying to figure out if they should get a divorce or not. So, different strokes for different folks. However, ultimately, our astrology, it must give us the ability to slow down. It has to, because if it only had the ability to describe the life we live without that information giving us pause surrounding certain parts of the life that we live, then the astrology had might as well just been reading a book or something, or watching a movie about someone else's life. But our astrology should slow us down long enough, and the information we receive about ourselves from astrology should slow us down long enough so that we have the opportunity to make decisions that are truly based on free will and that aren't just based on the momentum of how we normally show up within the world. So, to answer the question whether or not a person has the ability to change some fundamental fact of their destiny, or to change some fundamental fact of the stories that continue to be reiterated within the context of their lives, I think we all have this ability, but it's heavy lifting. It takes a lot of work to raise our vibration, and I'm currently in the process of trying to raise my own, and I can tell you it definitely is heavy lifting. However, that is the work, and that's the work of any spiritual practice, the work of slowing down long enough so that we could do the grunt work of changing who we are consciously enough so that we don't have to face the same turmoils and tribulations that we faced in the past, because hopefully we are approaching life and the circumstances that life gives us from a higher perspective. So yes, we do have the ability to transform our destiny, but it's a conscious daily effort until the effortful effort becomes effortless.
Thank you. That actually was really, really good. Very hopeful.
I hope you enjoy our Q&A segment, and if you have astrological questions that you'd like for me to answer, then please feel free to share them in the comment section down below. And remember, my book Mastering Traditional Astrology, A Depth of Beginning in the Celestial Art is now out and ready to be purchased. So pick yourself up a copy by visiting Amazon.com today. And if you want to become a professional astrologer, please feel free to check out any of the diploma programs that we offer here at the Oraculos School of Astrology by visiting oraculosastrology.com. I hope to see you in class soon.